Hi, welcome to the artifact tracking sheet presentation from Group 3, Nicholas Andrews for EDTC 615. This week we conducted our second data meeting in this process of the class. In the context of our data meeting was that we were a high school data team that was composed of 2 geometry teachers, 1 algebra teacher, and a physics teacher working together to answer some of these questions. This time we decided to look at the data used was the chapter test scores for geometry students as a form of macro data explored in the first data meeting. And the exploratory question that we used from the first data meeting was, why were the chapter 10 test scores significantly lower than other tests? What material and concepts were covered? Is there a better way to go about presenting the information? So from this, we started to compose or make up or come up with this idea of the data meeting number 2. We decided again to use Google Hangouts that we have been using to message back and forth and share documents and communicate. And we also used Google Docs sheets and slides to compose the presentations, consolidate the artifacts into one form and complete an artifact tracking sheet, and as well as share the artifacts back and forth. We met 2 different times throughout the week, and the first meeting happened on Friday, June 17th from the 2 p.m. to 2:30, where we first just sat down to discuss what tasks needed to be completed, what type of artifacts each person would supply, and the overall preparation process for the meeting. From there, we came out with the idea of what artifacts each person was going to be bringing and what we were doing in this overall data meeting. The actual data meeting number 2 happened on Sunday, June 19th from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. where we reviewed and discussed these different artifacts and completed the artifact tracking sheet. Luckily for us, all group members were in attendance for both meetings, so it was very convenient for us to kind of all get on the same page and meet 2 different times to work out the information we needed for this data meeting. Here's our artifact tracking sheet that we completed. It was actually a Google Doc that was created by one of the group members, where we were able to fill it out at the same time and kind of add our own thoughts and information throughout our discussions and rank this relevance and prominence in each of the categories for the learning gaps or instructional gaps that we were seeing. And it was just kind of a big consolidation of what we were doing. For my artifacts that I brought in for the overall process of doing the triangulation was actually number 6 in the chart, was my instructional calendar from my geometry class to help support and as an artifact that could be used to explore this exploratory question. As a group, we determined that this was definitely an instructional gap and that we looked at kind of the information that was being followed and that there was a low amount of time on individual practice to perform an assessment, especially on real-world problems. And perhaps this could be an indicator of why students are doing poorly on this chapter 10 test, which in the context of the data was based on similar triangles and right triangles. Artifact number 7 was my instructional presentations. These only show a few of the slides that I actually used because there's 2 different presentations I used that composed of somewhere to 30 to 40 different slides. So we identified this overall artifact as an instructional gap, that there was not enough time on simplifying radicals and not enough practice on real-world applications. And again, this might be the problem with the chapter 10 test scores being so much lower. In artifact number 8, these are some of the test items for my unit test, not the unit test that was used in actual chapter 10 data. But we identified this as an instructional gap, that the students were not instructed on these different types of questions. There is a select all that apply problems, multiple choice, and fill in the blank. And these questions were all computerized. So the students are not used to these multiple choice problems in the simplified radical form, and generally not used to using the computer to answer different questions. They're used to the paper and pencil. And perhaps this is a different reason why the chapter 10 test scores could be lower, and is something for us to kind of observe and look at later on. For artifact number 9, another artifact that I supplied was the unit test data table. We identified that there is definitely a learning gap here, that there is poor performance on certain problems, especially the real-world problems in the using simplest radical form in these idea of similar triangles and right triangles. As a group, we decided this relevance was 4, in that this is definitely relevant to connect to why this Chapter 10 test scores were lower. And as a prominence of 3, since the lower scores were about 50-50, that it was affecting about half the students. In artifact number 10, this is a data table for the end of the year test, and we identified there being an instructional gap having here. And you can see that these are the last 3 unit tests given throughout the year, and that there was definitely a decrease over these last 3 tests at the end of the year. That might be another effect that somewhere in the end of the year process that there is something happening to the students or to their motivation to cause the averages to decrease towards the end of the year. From the highlights of data meeting 2, we were able to meet twice in Google Hangouts, one as like a pre-meeting to identify the artifacts, and then the second time to actually conduct the overall data meeting. That was a great highlight for us because it got us working early on and got us a better understanding of what each person needed to do to prepare for the meeting, and also what to do after the meeting and what was expected of them. We also set timelines for individual tasks. We met on Friday, and then we were able to determine what artifacts each person were going to bring for our Sunday data meeting. And we also, after our data meeting, set a timeline to consolidate slides in Google Slides of the different artifacts people brought by 8 p.m. Monday, so we could have time for this consolidator to do the overall video summary of the week. We also supported each other throughout the week on the completion of tasks. Although we only met live twice, we probably messaged each other back and forth throughout every single day of the week, just to check in on what we were supposed to do, or if we were on the right track, or if we had questions that we thought other group members could answer. Since we started early on the communication, it made it easier to work throughout the week and not be so stressed on the different things. It also helped us with the completion of tasks, that things were done a little bit earlier so that we could consolidate and really reflect on the different data meeting for the different assignments throughout the week. And we also had good discussions in each artifacts category, whether it was instructional or learning gap, in the level of relevance and prominence of each, in that we actually used the screen share in Google Hangouts to explore different parts of each artifact and really come up with an idea of what we wanted as the level of relevance or prominence, the category, and what we thought it brought to the triangulation process. In overall reflections, it went much better than the first data meeting because we had much better communication and we set deadlines for each other and held each other accountable for certain parts of the overall data meeting. It was also much better communication, and it helped us to effectively complete the tasks and support each other throughout the week, and it really made everything much easier in the overall flow of the data meeting. We also did have some issues though that I think as a group we had trouble understanding the tasks for the week at certain points, kind of where to go or what to do, and that we kind of determined as a group that we should be trying to attend the live conferences with the professors or the professor to kind of get a better idea of the scheme. Unfortunately, none of us were able to attend the meeting for this last week, and so we're hoping that next data meeting that someone will, at least one of us will be able to attend to the meeting to give everyone a better idea of what was going on. We also felt that there needs to be more independent and or group research so we can help support each other better for the tasks and understand the general process for the meeting, what is expected and what we need to do to reach those expectations in completion. Overall, it was a great meeting. It went a lot smoother than the first one, and we're definitely starting to gel it as a team and understand each other and the overall process of these data meetings and getting used to using the technology that is needed.